Welcome back to my series where I go over everything to create a perfect Garden Warfare 3. Last part, I wrapped up all the variants I conceptualized, for the time being at least. If you're wondering about the fan variant video, it will not be a part of this main series, but instead a spin-off that you can expect in the future. As for this video, I'll get started on the balance of the game, something that nobody can agree on. I'm going to say now that I am well aware of my biases towards certain abilities, but I'll try and make them as objectively balanced as I can. In advance, I know that there's a 0% chance of me nailing them all on the first try, and I apologize for that. With that all of the way, let's get started. Everyone's gonna hate me. Starting with the Peashooter abilities, the bean bombs are probably one of the few well-designed ability sets this game has to offer, as there doesn't seem to be a best option commonly agreed on within the community. Too bad BFN had to nerf it to the floor, as sprinting in general did enough to fix it. Something to mention about all abilities that spawn moving objects like the bean bombs and imp hunt, they'll be changed to have them no longer take priority over players. What this means is that you can no longer push people around with those abilities. However, unlike the BFN Bean Bomb, simply sprinting into it won't completely kick it out of the way, so there will be some level of resistance. I believe that the only Bean Bomb that needs minor changes is the Dark Bean Bomb. Unless you're playing as Ice Pea, not a lot of people use it as a damaging tool, but instead a platform to bean jump on. Because of the change I made which pretty much ends bean jumping, I'll be buffing it to have a larger blast radius, but keep the amount of damage it deals the same. Gatling Pea got a nice change in BFN, where you don't get any armor when using it, making yourself more vulnerable. I'd adopt this change for my Garden Warfare 3. The damage will also be scaled back just a touch, as it's pretty overtuned at the moment. Retro Gatling is certainly something. I wanted to stray away from most alternate abilities only being min-maxed versions of the base, and Retro Gatling dealing more damage but firing slower is a textbook example of this. In order to make it more unique, I decided to make it a semi-automatic weapon to fit its sticker book description of having to manually crank out peas. It will still have 50 shots, and have a maximum firing rate of 650 rounds per minute, which is a bit slower than Law Pea's maximum rate of fire. For the damage, it'll deal 14 damage up close and 8 far away. Have fun getting carpal tunnel with this! Hyper is easy to fix. It will only make you run faster while it's active instead of granting speed and jump boosts. This also fixes Super P jump without having to actually change it. Coming up next, we have the Goops. For the standard one, I'd reduce its cooldown to 10 seconds like the Super Sticky Goop currently is, and slightly reduce the movement penalty enemies get when struck. This would make the ability marginally less annoying to deal with, as it will come out less often and the effect will be lighter when you are hit. Super Sticky Goop, on the other hand, will have a cooldown of 16 seconds and fully immobilize enemies it hits, as if you froze them. The effect will last 1.5 seconds, and it will deal intervals of 1 damage instead of 0. This is because you can actually respawn out of Super Sticky Goop if the Chomper ends up sniping you with it. The added damage is a way to prevent anything like that from happening. Next, it will have no splash damage, as being able to instantly shut down all of your opponent's kit just by shooting in their general direction would be too much. Lastly, the projectile will move noticeably slower than the base version, making it more of a skill-based ability, since you'd have to be able to both aim and lead your shot effectively to be rewarded with your sitting duck. Chomp Cannon will get a damage buff, now dealing 125 damage so it can actually OHKO soldiers, the class it was designed to counter. Just as a funny detail that wouldn't really affect gameplay, if you vanquish a soldier who's positioned a bit higher than you on the Y-axis, the game would give you a 100 XP bonus for how the tables have turned. Of course, this system wouldn't be completely foolproof, but it's the best system I could work out for the game to calculate if the soldier is on a rooftop without hard-coding every single instance of a roof for higher ground, to be applicable for one niche XP boost. So, simply checking to see if the soldier is on a higher surface than you makes a good middle ground. Burrow will behave like it does in Battle for Neighborville, where the startup animation is much quicker. Something I don't like about the Garden Warfare 2 burrow is that it feels like it takes ages for you to go underground, and half the time, you can die when it looks like you're completely under. Being able to jump right into a burrow feels so much nicer for me. I'm not even sure if this needs to be mentioned, but it should go without saying that the overall jankiness of burrow will be fixed, including things like mid-air burrows and the disjointed hitbox when swallowing. Sprint burrow, first of all, will have its inconsistent chomping bug fixed. It will also be changed to make it travel the same distance as the stock burrow before expiring, only faster. The last buff it gets is that once you exit the burrow without swallowing someone, you'll be launched upward a small bit, giving you access to slightly higher elevations than a chomper would normally get to. It's no rocket jump though. Think along the lines of the height Barrel Blast gives you, only a bit lower. To finish it off, in order to not just be a strictly better burrow, it will have double the recharge time, and to prevent people from exploiting it for kamikaze chomping, it will not instantly refresh upon respawning. And for the warps, they're pretty balanced as is. I'm not biased, I swear. The stock spikeweed will have a faster recharge, going down to 20 seconds per spikeweed instead of 60. It will also lose the ability to instantly refresh whenever you swallow someone. For placing it, it will have a 1.5 second arming period before being able to be triggered by an opponent. This just prevents the chomper from having an instant win button at any point blank encounter. This change will also be applied to the vampweed. Notice how I didn't include that change for the spiky spikeweed? Yeah, that's how it actually has a niche compared to the other ones. It will have the recharge time change like the stock spikeweed, but it will have a 35 second recharge instead. Its damage will be buffed to 75 as well, so you can OHKO imps if you want to be mean. As I mentioned with the vampweed, it will have its arming time nerfed like the stock one, and as the recharge time, it will have a 30 second cooldown. It will also heal you for 50 health instead of 40, for no particular reason other than to make it a nice multiple of 25. The heal beam will be adjusted to make it so much more convenient for your allies. Now it will automatically hook up to damaged teammates and prioritize ones who are at substantially lower on health. All this does is force Sunflower players to actually help out and not staple themselves to some random other Sunflowers, or just not heal you at all. Lastly, it will always choose other players over AI, as we've all had instances where people deciding that healing a Dark Flower is more important than healing you when you're at 2 health. The Rainbow Heal Beam is the same thing functionally, so it gets the same changes. The Sunbeams get the same changes regarding their armor as the P-Gatlings, and damage-wise, they're pretty well balanced between each other. The only difference is that both of them will get a minor damage nerf, with the Solar Flare Beam being a little more severe. For the Heal Flowers, I think they're fine as is, and I like how the minor difference in sun production affects which one you'd like to use. Overall, I like the Rainbow Heal Flower, but I can understand people who like the standard one. As for the Dark Flower, that's where things have changed. It will have its accuracy nerfed, but it will deal more damage. Additionally, any vanquishes they earn will be counted as your own vanquishes, ding and all. It feels lame to be cheated out of a bunch of XP because the Dark Flower stole your own vanquish, so I like to fix that. Lastly, its awareness will be decreased, as they can detect you from what feels like a light year away. Potato Mines will be changed to work like how they do in Battle for Neighborville. They'll deal the same damage as usual, but they'll each have a little tracker on them to let you know where they're at. They'll also have a different icon for if someone stepped on one versus when one was destroyed. I also like being able to have 4 of them at a time. Something I'd like to add myself is a visual indicator for arming potato mines, looking like how they do in the tower defense games, only having the tip sticking out of the ground and emerging when ready. And as always, the same will be applied to the bling mines, but with blingier spotting icons. The potato nugget mines will also get spotting icons, and fully lose their arming period, so you can spam them to your heart's content when someone gets close. As a final change, there will be no upper limit to how many you can have out at once, so they can take over an area if you want them to. This will be balanced by the slower recharge for each mine. For each of the drones, they'll have fewer restrictions on their camera control, as well as gain the ability to aim. I also like Battle for Neighborville's Big Bulb Barrage attack over the Corn Strike for several reasons. Firstly, it's easier to aim, as the airstrike just activates in the general area of where your crosshair is, and you have no real way of telling exactly where it goes, especially with the depth perception issues I find it can have. Secondly, it's a lot more consistent, because the corn cobs often get caught on random bits of map geometry and fail to hit the target. And lastly, it comes out a lot faster. Corn Strike mostly relies on the target to not be incredibly aware or good at the game, as they have ample warning time for when they're about to get attacked. Now for each individual drone, the Garlic Drone is good damage-wise, and so is the Dark Garlic Drone. The Artichokes both need buffs though. The regular Artichoke drone can have its health buffed to 25 and deal more damage. The Red Artichoke can stay mediocre damage-wise, but it will also be buffed to having 25 health. Moving on to the Walnut abilities, the standard one will be buffed to give you 3 of them, and each one will be the same height. They'll also have the ability to be stacked on top of each other by using the ability at the base of a current one, combining the health of them to make a super wall. The maximum height will be 3 walls though, the perfect number for you to set up a defense however you'd like with your selection. Johnny will be increased in size so you can fully shield the cactus, because as they stand they're just weaker tackle dummies. You'll also be able to carry 2 of them. One of my main gripes with the EM Peach is that it does damage. Weird, I know, but it's like one of those things that just frustrates me for no real reason. So, because I'm petty, it will no longer deal damage and only stun enemies. Because I'm condensing the Citron's kit into a 3-ability set, the Hyperball ability takes place of the Naval Laser, as it would be strange for the Beam Citrons to just have an ability that's just a slightly different beam. Instead, the Hyperball will be worked into that slot and increase your sprinting speed for a while, and briefly grant infinite stamina. However, if you ever stop sprinting during that ability, it will be cancelled immediately, like how it works in Garden Warfare 2. As another downside, you'll take 50% more damage during it to give the attackers a fair chance at vanquishing you if you're to ever run away using it. The shield is going to behave like it does in Battle for Neighborville as a toggle, but it will have way less health, 200 at the most. As for what that means for the Mood Shield, it will just be an alternate ability that goes in the slot of the Hyperball, as it's a defensive buffing ability instead of a mobility buff. While it's active, it will make your shield all rainbow and double its health and healing time. If the shield breaks during this, the ability will instantly end, and it will take 50% longer to become usable as well. On that topic, that's the other problem that the Battle for Neighborville Peel Shield has. If you're to ever have it break, you can just run or stall for a few seconds, and voila! You just have yourself an extra 600 health to play with. Here, it will not be usable after it breaks until it fully heals itself, and that will take much longer than it does in Battle for Neighborville. The Spin Dash will be like Garden Warfare 2's, only dealing 50 damage and giving a huge burst of momentum instead of traveling a fixed distance, as it feels more like a dash that way. However, its hurt box will be shrunken down as it feels a bit too generous in Garden Warfare 2. Next is the Kernel Corn, another bundle of fun when it comes to his ability balance. The Butter Barrage desperately needs a damage buff, so I'll make each Butter Piece deal 30 damage instead of 20, as a 50% increase in damage should be enough for you to start hearing dings when using it. The Bigger Better Butter will have its damage nerfed to 175 to make it slightly less punishing for people who just so happen to walk into the outskirts of the blast, but still do enough to vanquish those caught in the worst of it. The ability will also have the bug fixed where it occasionally fails and does nothing. The Husk Hop, it will just get the Battle for Neighborville treatment, as it's a good ability, but not a stupidly overpowered menace that instantly obliterates everything it touches like it does in Garden Warfare 2. Did you know? Husk Hop in Garden Warfare 2 has a DPS of 662! In fact, that number dwarfs the DPS of other abilities like Blazing Blast, P-Gatling, and rivals the damage output of the Infinity Mechs. In Battle for Neighborville, all of the shots fired from it explode after a short delay and deal significantly less damage. It will also give you less vertical momentum, so it isn't just rocket jump, but it does damage. The Shuck Shot change I'm proposing may be a bit of a hot take, but from a game design standpoint, I like the Battle for Neighborville Shuck Shot more. Let me explain. Something I dislike about the damage nuke abilities, ZPG and Shuckshot in particular, is that despite the fact that they're designed to be used at middling to longer distances, the only time they're used consistently is at point blank. Sure, it requires some level of aim to pull it off, but the point of melee versus range matchup is that if someone is able to sneak up on a ranged character and pressure them into a close quarters fight, the melee character should win, as it's their intended area. It's only fair, too, as the ranged guy has the overall advantage at any other distance. However, by giving these characters a 300 damage instant win button that they can use at a moment's notice at any distance sort of defeats the purpose of the matchup. Giving credit where credit is due, if a Chomper goops a soldier before they spot you, you've pretty much already won, which is how things should go, making the encounter feel more natural. But for a Super Brains approaching a Corn, they don't have the luxury of a stunning insurance policy. This is where Shuckshot specifically becomes badly designed. Unlike ZPG, the Shuckshot fires two 150 damage corn cobs simultaneously that spread apart from each other as they travel. Heard that last part? They spread apart from each other as they travel. The ability's function inherently punishes you for not using it at point blank to cheese fights, as it gets less accurate and less damaging for using it at range. Going back for the Battle for Neighborville Shuckshot, he fires two 90 damage cobs one after the other with good accuracy. This redoing fixes almost everything wrong with the old one. It can still be used at point blank if you want, but because of the charge up and delay between shots, you still have to aim and land both charges on a presumably moving target while being attacked by them. It also fixes a minor issue of it being a reskin of ZPG, but more infuriating for the reasons I listed earlier. And lastly, you can actually use it at a range like how it should be. I can understand if people disagree with me here, but one of the sparse things that Battle for Neighborville executed extremely well are a lot of the abilities, with the Shuckshot being no exception. Anyways, the multi-shuck is terrible. It will be completely reworked as an ability to function like the Dark Bean Bomb. Instead of sending out a barrage of cobs that deal damage equivalent to a stiff breeze, it will become a charged ability. It will have 4 charges, and each one has a quicker startup and shoots a 50 damage cob missile. Each charge will have 75% of the recharge time from the standard Shuckshot. They will also fly faster, making it a better sniping tool than the standard one. Time Snare is just another one of Garden Warfare 2's annoying stun abilities. Usually I'd replace it with the Battle for Neighborville Jinx ability, but that would overlap with Necro's gimmick. I'd keep the stun ability, but rework it to be less precise and annoying. So, instead of it being the generic stun projectile, the Rose will shoot a short wind-up where she waves her wand around a bunch, and then a shockwave style of energy will come out around her, extending to a 10-meter radius around her. Zombies caught in it will get the Time Snare stun effect, and get knocked back a tiny bit. This will make it more of a last resort option when zombies get too close, instead of a combo tool to cheese fights as a support character. Arcane Enigma can stay mostly the same as it does in Garden Warfare 2, because the invincibility activates way too fast in Battle for Neighborville. Something that I will add to it though is that getting attacked while it's active will chip away at its remaining duration, so it no longer works as a getaway tool as effectively. Arcane Lotus will get the same treatment as the stock version, and only give you 25 self-heal instead of 35. With the last set, we have the Gootify. This is another case where I prefer the Battle for Neighborville version for a variety of reasons. Firstly, the ability to not instantly make someone nigh helpless is quite nice, as it is effectively another stun ability. I also really enjoy the property of the attack going through walls, as it opens up a lot of new ambush strategies, as well as making it an ability with a higher skill ceiling in general. And lastly, I just love the Goofy Goat animation that plays as the effect travels. It will have a couple things changed outside the fundamentals though. Starting with a buff, the Gootify effect will take place much quicker than it does in Battle for Neighborville. The nerf will be that it no longer affects zombies in their legendary modes, because it feels incredibly cheap to work hard for your power boost, only for it to be ripped away from you by a single button press. And in case you don't know, being Gootified doesn't just briefly take you out of your legendary mode, but it literally turns it off. So even if you survive the Gootify, your mode will be lost anyways. The Psychedelic Goat will get all of the listed changes, but it will be buffed to make it so that way the Gootified zombies don't have as much of a speed and jump buff, because all the ability does on most fronts is make it easier for them to get away and harder to hit. So, those are the Garden Warfare 2 plant abilities done, dusted, and, hopefully, more balanced. If you're upset that I took the slightest bit of inspiration from Battle for Neighborville and that I acknowledged some of its positives, let me know in the comments, that way I can call you delusional. Just kidding. I hope you enjoyed this part of the Garden Warfare 3 series. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you later.